click, and I guess it's working.
Cool. I see a red dot at the top, recording the call, yep.
Yeah, and I got a little message saying, please inform people that they're being recorded. So you're being recorded.
Okay, so I mean, let's do it like this. I mean, I think there's no harm in indexing, the context and so on. I really appreciate receiving, the book of the 24 philosophers when you started the communication. And the strangest thing is how, although it looks really esoteric and difficult, it was just a confirmation for me of how much work I had done and how much I had learned over this short lifetime, that none of them were alien or difficult or problematic, except the aforementioned
number 17. The number 17 was just badly phrased in the version that I linked to, whereas you sent back this other version where it was quite clear. And I forget what it said exactly.
I've got it up here. Let's go there. Yeah, it's completely different here, right? The intellection of itself alone, free from every predicate.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that's clearer. So it was a little bit of a fault of the translation with the proclamation idea, but I quite like that. I quite like that because. So let's introduce this. Why don't you introduce what this is, so people wouldn't know what we were talking about?
I don't know a whole lot of the backstory, but it was just this wonderful compendium of hermetic ideas, which all have this. The classic example is the infinite sphere, whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
So it's a collection of aphorisms, I guess, right? Aphorisms.
They
it's the theory of God, isn't it? It's a medieval compendium of position statements about the nature of God by 24 then prominent.
No, that was just hokum. That was made up.
Okay.
They put this little bit of a frame story around it. Okay. Oh, we had 24 philosophers. They all got together, and this is what they decided was like the story with God. No, I think it was just.
It's like Plato and Socrates. It's a device.
Yes, a device indeed. Yeah, and 24 is significant, as you pointed out. It's twice 12.
Yeah. With all the implications of the.
It has those zodiacal. How do you say that? But
yeah. So let's say number one, God. Everything starts here in the way it's translated with God : in the version that I have up open. A unity generating a unity, reflecting in itself the one flame. And that's number one in this translation. And essentially, they are all descriptions of reality. No, God, they say God, but they're descriptions of being, the nature of being in the experience of being in the world, put in
with all these other beings, which is absolutely daft, because the thing about being is there's only one of them.
Yeah.
And I call that I, and so do you, and that's crazy.
Yeah. And so they work from the many, the 24, backwards or inwards to the one through language, right? This is what this exercise is. So now, in the previous version that you had sent,
right?
I wonder if we can find that, because
I've got a link to it, and here it is. God is a unity, generating unity, reflecting back on himself in one flame.
Same, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But go to number 17.
Yeah, that's the variance. And
that was what got me thinking. And
God is comprehension of himself alone, receiving no proclamation. It's a goofy translation.
It's goofy, but I think it comes from the worldview. It may be more closer to the way the religious mindset frames
a king in a castle in a walled city.
Yeah, that image, and also the idea of a declaration of faith, proclamation, declaration. The king proclaims, but so does the Muslim declare his faith, the Shahada, right? The main La ilaha illallah is a declaration of faith, of submission. It could be a proclamation, and
keep going.
And the Christian idea that one has to accept Christ to enter that the way, that I am the way. So one has to actually somehow acknowledge that before one gets in. All the good work.
It's I am the way.
Yeah. But still, the need in doctrine, anyway, in the political sense of religion, the need for proclamation, declaration.
Yeah, and for symbols that sort of stand still for a while because everything else is kind of going, whoa, you know.
So in that light, I struggled with it so much that now I don't want to let it go and take the easier translation. I thought what it was, and it kind of works out useful for my project too.
Oh, okay.
My problems with the reason we're talking, which we'll come to, I guess, in a minute. It seems that the singularity, for want of a better word, because it now kind of means something else, the unity does not, in fact, receive these declarations and proclamations in the way we imagine it does, because it defeats its very it's counter to its very ontology to cut it up and to say
it would be a second, and it is a first without a second. So the second has to come and go, I declare, here comes the first.
It seemed to me to be an effort to index both the fallacious and the constructive nature of language, of speech.
Okay, yeah.
False and construction are actually the same word, same.
Oh yeah, is that true?
I think I don't know the etymology, but I'm suggesting.
I've got a funny little poem. I mean, I'm a great one. I guess I'm into non-duality, but really I love duality best, Totally. And I've got this lovely little poem. It's two-ness, the word two-ness, Twone. I'm going to emphasize that, Oness. Two-ness has one, just sort of bracketed there. And you can't, there's really nothing to say about one or anything else.
Yeah.
Without the false face, which you're referring to.
I think so.
To represent at all is
to represent at all. So it's sort of the Wittgenstein's problem of language. It's I think in that debate which I sent you between Foucault and Chomsky.
Oh yeah.
They were both taking slightly different positions on the platform of this problem. Foucault was saying you cannot find for yourself in the prison house of power a position more worthy than another. You know, you're caught in the terms. And Chomsky was saying, yeah, I know, but, you know, you got to try. And sort of almost meekly admitting that Foucault was right, but still you have to soldier on. You know?
I don't know. I just wanted to throw a brick at Mr. Foucault. I did, really. Because he was having too much fun being the kind of brat. You know, he was being a brat.
Yeah.
And,
but you know, but there's a truth in that, right? I think what was wrong was the ethos that you know punk ethos. It's kind of like, punks are privileged people who poke their noses with pins, right? They're not the people that are really destitute on the street. Punks are our kids that say "fuck you" to us, and
right,
the majority of them, and in the French school, the post-structuralist, you know, the bunch of groovy, funky, you know, intellectuals. I love them all, but
they're all TV stars and things. I think in Germany too. Certainly not here in North America. That does not happen.
No.
Yeah.
Oliver was suggesting a way forward for me, given that I was having a little difficulty formulating or moving forward with my thesis, my intuition that there is a common ground in the realm of, let's call it predictability, that allows us to consider data science and astrology in the same field, in the same realm, and of similar worth. Right? So this was like a great intuition on my part, but I was struggling, and he's got his deadline. So he says, you know, why don't you have a chat with Derek? And I said, okay, you know. So it turns out we've actually met and spoken before and enjoyed that. So here we are.
It's sort of like the origin of a lot of this stuff was in that Hellenistic period. Rome had sort of taken over the Eastern Mediterranean, and well, actually the whole Mediterranean, and then up into Europe and so on. But they were just recycling the Greek culture, but then they had the Persian thing happening, and then the Semitic thing from Judea, and like the Egyptian thing was very big, of course, you know, like Alexandria. And it was the emergence of alchemy. It was the emergence of astrology as such, which was taking on the Babylonian, the Chaldean stuff. And all the way to Bactria, to India, and who knows where that's going? I mean, it's going this way, it's going that way.
I mean, as the you know, as the sort of the approach of the traditional school, it's ahistorical. You know, it doesn't really matter where it came from. It's here and it's true, and it seems to repeat in different formulations. Does it matter if Islam is really a ripoff of Hindu, of Shiva, or if Krishna is actually Christ, because, you know, Krishna myths seem to emerge and proliferate after, you know, the
India. Hell turned blue.
Yeah. I mean, the Christians care, and the Muslims care, and the Hindus care, only because of that number 17, because of their proclamations, declamations of truth. They care, but the entity behind it all doesn't care. And if, be it by science or theology, we can get closer to that entity, surely what we will find is the same, whether you approach it through a Christian portal or a.
I am very fond of the idea, and this is very much in perennialism, is that I think Yeats I was reading this book by Yeats, A Vision, and there's this line in there. It's so beautiful. He says, well, Plato was the first Christian, and that's quite true, that there would be no Christianity as such without Plato. And that was that was potent stuff, because that's also, the origins of logic and of geometry, mathematics.
So the underlying order of things, that emerges and presents itself to human intuition or knowledge, and takes shape in the aforementioned language, right? In one of the many languages. I think that is the process that at least the traditional school proposes, that yes, practice your path, your way, your set of symbols, but study the correlations with the other symbols, recognize the doctrinal differences and stick to your own, but don't doubt that if at all there is something behind the door, it's the same thing.
It is the same thing, and the little door is right in there somewhere,
So let me maybe give you so the reason why you're so important here, I guess, for my in my search is, I'm not an expert on anything in a sense. I've spent a lot of time looking at lots of things, and usually I stop at the beginning, and stay there. I start and stop. I stay at the beginning of things. So and I think that now I've understood that that's not so bad.
No, I think it's the most profound thing, and it does tend to get skipped over. People run past it in their lust for knowledge.
Yeah.
But the simplest stuff is the deepest stuff.
And I think sometimes it's the facility that takes you. So if you lack the facility, you might be stuck, and it might allow you some space to realize, like if you ponder on two notes, there's a whole universe.
Yes.
Whereas if you can play Beethoven with one hand and one eye and one half your mind, maybe you miss that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm working on that basis and trying to build a mosaic of ideas, and there are serious shortcomings in building bridges, between data science and astrology. I need experts, or at least people who know more than me.
Right.
Put the burden of expertise on you, or the responsibility on you. But so that was why Oliver suggested you. I'm also talking to a friend in Malaysia who's a serious amateur Vedic astrologer.
Oh, excellent.
So he helps me understand some of that stuff. But so this is it. The intuition is, what? We're moving through modernism and post-modernism into an era that is nameless, really, in contemporary taxonomy of periods. We've said postmodernism, passé. We haven't named it in our. Go on.
James Lovelock has a name for it. At 101 years of age. Actually, the book he came out with a year ago is Nova Scene. The Nova Scene. There it is, 2019.
The Nova Scene. That's the name of the book?
That is the name of the book. And basically he's saying, for our species to survive, it's going to be the age of the AIs. And we should embrace our new AI overlords. He didn't feel bad about it,
He's not saying it with an irony. He's actually.
No, he's fully. He's saying this is a good thing, and it's really emerging just at the nick of time. And it's like this typically human thing. It's like neck and neck. Like, which horseman of the apocalypse is going to get there first?
Yeah. Well, I have a slightly different take that I've been developing, and I don't think it contradicts anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a retrospective terminology, kind of something that a summation of, more summation of where we've been to mark where we are. And it's this idea of post-tradition. Postmodern, modern, postmodern.
Okay.
Postmodern has been called out for simply being a euphemism for late modern. The father didn't really die; he's just gotten old. He's still here, right? So in that spirit, I suggest that actually the same cycle applies to the death of tradition, which is what a lot of modernism was about. And this is actually how Anthony Giddens, for instance, a very important sociologist, uses the term post-tradition to say that tradition is no longer relevant. We are free from superstition and so on. We are now modern, sort of Enlightenment, humanist kind of social science, right? So he suggests that tradition is finished, and so now let's not worry whether it's modern or postmodern. It's all the same. Let's call it post-tradition. And I say, yeah, let's call it post-tradition, but let's just say tradition can no longer operate in the same way. It has to be cognizant of other traditions. And so in that sense, we are in a post-traditional era. We now have traditions in the communication, like we can use a communication argument. Traditions have to acknowledge the coexistence of other traditions, and modernism itself is a tradition. You could trace it back to a branch, from Plato and the Aristotle and Plato, into the Renaissance. You could do that. You and I think we're tracing, at least I'll speak for myself, Plato comes into this post-traditional or the traditional school, Kumaraswamy and so on. They embrace Plato. So, the Greeks had their feet in both cultures. But a quick summary of my post-tradition. So it's an idea that we are here now with all our tools, AI included, but we are still human, and that humanism is expressed as traditions. Modernism itself is a kind of tradition. So it's a mechanism. Tradition is a way of identifying yourself. So those who hold with tradition suggest that it's never changed, but it's always changing. Those that hold with science say that we're always changing, but actually, a lot of things haven't changed. They're just on the same pinhead, doing a different jig. And so this idea that there is a common space in this post-traditional paradigm. That's me. That's my thing.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I'm pretty much there. I've got this thing about the fours and the threes that I may have explained. There was this quote from Arthur Koestler about the forest and the trees, which I appropriated and sort of mangled into the fours and the threes. Because his forest was basically the rhizome, the network structure. There's no top, there's no bottom, it's just this higgledy-piggledy sort of Deleuzian thing. But then the tree is the stratification, the hierarchy, like this. And they both need the other. So this dualism it turns up everywhere. It's left brain, right brain, figure, ground.
Yeah. But why 4 and 3? Tell me.
Just because fours sounds like forest, if you hear it kind of funky, and threes kind of sounds like trees. And the traditional classical analogy, A is to B as C is to D. Now, if it's A is to B as B is to C, then it becomes a 3-term, and the 3-term is the geometric mean. And suddenly we've stepped away from something that's kind of linear to something that is in the plane and starting this dimensional ascent, which is very much what Plato and his friends were up to.
So it sounds difficult to visualize, but I have a sense of it from my own explorations of numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers.
Well, it's your basic.
And religion and structures and structure. It's actually structure and it's a number. Actually, there's no other word for it. It's the ontology of numbers.
That's right, and it's about the geometry of numbers.
The geometry of numbers.
So that if you have your sort of classic fractal is a branching tree, or the body, right? Here's the trunk of the body, the core of the body, and then I have extensions, and then each extension has an extension. So we are this kind of fractal structure. And of course, it gets better if the end of each finger there was a little hand, with the fingers on it. But this branching tree-like structure creates what's called, at every step, it's a step up the ladder of dimension. It goes whoop, and then whoop. It becomes this radial structure.
That's the. Did you mention it already? The chaos theory and.
Oh yeah, it's all in there. Right? Basically, then you can. The space that goes with this hierarchy, it's the genus and species hierarchy, which is Socrates and Plato. And it's the shape of that space is hyperbolic. And hyperbolic space is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. There's more room.
So let me speak a little bit about my understanding of number and this trees, 4s and 3s.
Okay. One thing about ones.
Yeah.
Is that the scaling relationship, they call it the multiplicative inverse. So if I have a numerator and a denominator here, and if I flip them, then I get the inverse. It's like a mirror, but it's this distorting mirror, and it's all about what's inside the interval between 0 and 1, and what is outside, greater than 1. You've got an infinite number of rational numbers extending forever in that infinite series.
That's what's outside. That's what's outside. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, correct. Yeah.
But there's a one-to-one correspondence with rational numbers inside that unit interval. And if that unit interval is the first interval, and then it is repeated everywhere outside. And yet that is also folded inside. And so it's this.
That echoes, that justifies my being stuck at the beginning.
Yes, it does, of course.
But so there. That's why I get stuck with most things, because it's enough. It's enough. The opening paragraph is the book. It's more than the book.
Yeah.
There's a universe within it.
Yes.
And you can ponder upon it for yourself, in fact, and get just as much. But this number thing. Mm-hmm. So let's leave out the 1s and the 2s. Let's deal with them quickly. So the 1s are the Hindus. The 2s are the Christians and the Muslims, the Judeo-Christian tradition. The 0, which we didn't even mention, they're the Buddhists. Right. Yeah. But let's leave these people out for a second and just talk about being in the world, which is, I think, what we're trying to talk about, trying to make sense of being in the world, given the 24 aphorisms, given that we're still mostly in the world, just having a sense of what it actually is helps us operate here better. I think that's where most of us are, right? We're not bodhisattvas. We're just, like you said, you love the duality of it, right? We're in the duality of it, or the triad. So anyway, let me quickly get to the 3 and the 4. So the 4 is obviously a multiple of 2.
Yes. Twice 2s, and it sort of describes the first data table.
So we've come out from the Garden of Eden. 1, 0, and 2. We've come out the gate, and we're in the world of 4s and 3s.
Right.
So the 4s, the cross, which is a symbol from the world of 4 to the world of 1, 2, and 0.
Okay.
The cross is the structure. It's a building element. It allows us to build.
Okay, but I'm going to say that we have a two-way table.
Yeah.
A, B, C, D. Two-way table.
So that's
the basic data table. It is a flat structure, and it is the basic database. It's the basic statistical.
We're still in the 4 there. We're still in.
It's all.
But so if the 4 harks back to the 2.
It does.
Now,
which is rows and columns. It's subjects and predicates. It's objects and attributes.
But the 3, the Trinity, is most mystical in that it, to me, anyway, in my understanding, it refers to the 1 and to the 0 at the same time. So that's why it's the 0 that allows it to be the rhizome, that allows it's. I'm just riffing on your image, but I think the 3 is mystical, and the 4 is structural. The 3 has
it's the funny thing, but I see those exactly
the other way.
I see the 4s as the mystical because it has no preference. It doesn't say that it values. It doesn't ontologize. It doesn't value things over the qualities of things. They're exactly with parity.
Nice, yeah.
And then they're undefined until the 3s steps in, and the 3s makes structure.
So 3 is the Olympic podium.
The 3 makes the cause and effect. In fact, if 3 looks like a sort of a branching figure, you've got fanning out, 1, 2, 3, and then you have fanning in, going the other way. So there's the deductive system there. Whereas to me, it's like sort of the 4s represents the statistics, the probability, the data science, if you will. But what we do with that is we ontologize, we create worlds. We have to. I mean, that's where we're configured, and we always want the 1, and we want it explained.
But I feel, all that aside, because I'm not arguing with it or confirming it, a separate starting point adjacent to what we've just gone through, that I have a strong sense that the 3 relates to the circle in a way that the 4 is obviously the square. So I see the relationship between the 3 and the 4 as a euphemism for the other euphemism, squaring the circle.
You are absolutely correct. For every triangle, there's an out circle and there's an in circle.
But so so we're kind of coming out of simplicity into proliferation and form, right? And so far in this conversation, we're coming out, or rather, we are complexity, and we're trying to understand our very complexity by going backwards. Yes.
Exactly. So it's all about time. So if you wanted to talk about Heidegger and being, well, time being.
Yeah.
And of course, the difficulty of being on time. But there was this great line from Yeats, which I'd like to find. And, I like this. Only one symbol exists, though the reflecting mirrors make many appear and all different.
Wow.
That's Yeats.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. And I think I quoted this to you before. The ultimate reality, because neither one nor many, concord nor discord, is symbolized as a phaseless sphere. But as all things fall into a series of antinomies in human experience, it becomes, the moment it is thought of, what I shall presently describe as the 13th cone. Well, the thing about it, he puts that in his system, the system of 28 houses or phases. But the 13th cone, it's like these interpenetrating cones is his fundamental conceit, which are like two interpenetrating triangles, one coming, one going. And so we could think of something like Einstein's light cone. That's included in this picture. It's a section of that radiant sphere about which, as he just said, we have nothing to say because it transcends all phases. It's complete. It is included in those 24 philosophers. That's all those guys can talk about.
Yeah.
Even though they can't say anything about it that isn't a complete lie, Yeah.
So to bring about a conversation, to include in the same conversation, a meaningful conversation,
right,
respectful conversation about astrology and science and data science in precise, I had to go through a few maneuvers. Right. So I think I spend most of my time, and I've had ample time with this, just dealing with the ground of this possibility and I've been searching and found lots of stuff, but I haven't written the argument. So I'm a Jaffna Tamil brought up in Malaysia, and to very westernized parents, childhood, to people who educated in the English milieu, right? It's seriously. So, like my mom and dad would recite Shelley or Shakespeare, and
were they secular, or did they?
What is that distinction? It's very complicated. This is the crux of
a complicated distinction. It means like 1,000 years. That's what the secularum is.
So our last few hundred have been extremely complicated.
Uh-huh.
Right? So we are both secular and religious. I think that's the best way to put it. We are both, and in different degrees, to different degrees. And this is where the mindset comes from to deal with this problem that I've raised. Or this is where the raising of the problem arises from this background of having both, right? Uh-huh. So my mom has degrees in English and Tamil, right? And she was a school teacher, and they're both passed now, but towards the end of her life, she prayed a lot. She could recite all the sacred stuff, a lot of the sacred hymns. And when I was young, she taught us the basics of how to pray, to Ganesh. Like only one prayer we learned, 6 lines. And I still use that. I scolded her for not teaching me more and asked her to teach me another one to Murugan for a performance. And she did when I was 40-something or 50-something. But when I was young and I asked her seriously, so we do this before I go for an exam, we pluck flowers, and we don't do it regularly. We're not ritualistic in that way.
Right.
So is it true? Is it true? And she says, look, I don't know, but it helps. Right? That's not the person who passed away recently. The person who passed away recently was totally in the groove He was in the group of that thing, right?
Well,
now, I think...
The veil grows thin. The ancestors were just on the other side going, come, come.
Yeah, so she basically, I think what she was telling me is it is just practice. I think that's how I've interpreted ever since, that it's practice and it is what it is. It is its own world, you know, and I believe that is a kind of ontological criteria. That's the criteria for that meaning of that word, ontology. It's practice. You know, we make it by doing it. We make it by, so epistemology is what we were saying before. We make it by saying it. Ontology is we are it by doing it. I suggest, or I imagine. I sent you that picture of the 9 planets, the Navagraha.
Yes, that was great.
Every Shaivite temple has one. I think in northeast or northwest corner, it's all, you know, orientation is important. It's their set of 9 stone, black stone. We call it Karankalle, which is a granite, I think, black granite. And they're always there. We just, like, you know, used to it. We go around the main deity, then you definitely go around the planets and you know, circumambulate, and you go around the whole temple. It's just normal, right?
Right.
And they are the 9 planets that go in the houses, and the planets. That's astrology. So there's
it's the same story with cathedrals in Christendom. You know, even up to the time of the Enlightenment, those churches are solar observatories.
Yeah.
You know, they have the placement of the windows so that, you know, they can actually see when Easter is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
And to build on that sidebar, so is the Muslim salat, the prayer, the standing and the kneeling and the head to the ground. It's to do with the rising and the setting of the sun. It's these elemental things. They are built into the practices of our culture.
Yeah.
That we practice these things, but the idea of the music of the spheres, the cycle of the seasons, the resonance of light and sound and physics, it all seems to be the same field of knowledge, just taking different details and different appearing in different languages, in different languages.
But we also have to remember that these are all images. They are metaphors.
Yeah.
So that they aren't fixed.
No.
You know?
No. Which brings me back, I think, to my to some of the work that I had to do to begin the topic, to open the topic properly. So these are kind of preliminary rituals. I have to break the ground, so to speak, before I can erect my temple. And all I've done is broken the ground, I think. I hope I've done it right. But one of the first things one has to do is follow Kumaraswamy and Huxley, you know, to debunk scientism, which is a prevailing superstition in our contemporary culture. So how do you actually do that gently without debunking science? That's the difficult part, because science is actually a very perfect form of what it is. It's not been used very well in terms of what it's not. Right? So the idea here is that this is Huxley, actually, beautiful. He takes Hume as the paragon of scientific thinking, and shows us that the error in this way, and he says that what reason can do is move a hypothesis abstractly to a place of higher probability of being true. And what empirical inquiry can do, I forget the actual terms he uses, I'll check it later and I'll tell you because it's kind of important. He distinguishes between 2 aspects of scientific practice and thinking, is to take that probability to an even higher degree. Right? So all we are doing is working with hypotheses and probability that they're right. And we can increase that likelihood. The greater our reach of experimentation, the more focused our
sort of the experimentation sort of trims it back again from the hypothetical, which sort of fans out with possibility, and then the actual performance of experiment will kind of eliminate. No, that's not true.
Will reduce.
Yeah, reduce. Yeah.
So let me use his words, because I don't want to. Yes, this is what he does. Good thing I checked, because it's not the distinction between reason and experiment. It's the distinction between abstract reasoning and experimental reasoning.
Yes. Okay.
This is how science works. And he says that, I'll read what I've written. Huxley argues that at best, the abstract reasoning upon which scientific thinking is grounded can create a presumption in favor of one hypothesis over another, and that reasoning, which concerns matters of fact or evidence, can only increase such presumptions. And he concludes this line of thought thus: final conviction can only come to those who make an act of faith. Beyond that. Beyond that, we are back in the territory of faith. And elsewhere, he goes even more pointedly to say that the very formulation of hypothesis comes from the ground of faith.
Oh, yeah.
So at the beginning and at the end, there's no difference between religion and science. It's only the process in the middle. And you know what? The Christians aren't that different. They're still searching for the true wood of the cross, or the wood of the true cross. They're still looking for proofs and stuff. So you know, it's not that different. There's reason, there's faith, and we connect those two. It's the way you were talking about the fours and the threes, and the where the rhizome and the rhizome and the structure, they merge. The problem is we mistake, I think you were alluding to it, we mistake the pictures of reality for reality itself.
There was that great line from C.S. Lewis that I really like about we have mistaken the rim for the hub. And he was talking explicitly about Dante's cosmos, which is the medieval cosmos. That it's the Earth-centric, not the solar-centric. But that switch is just, which is going to be the third planet? Switch, you're done, right? But there's this scientific triumphalism about, Galileo struggled, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, they did burn Bruno at the stake, that's true. But
by the way, they also got Galileo to renounce and denounce his faith in astrology.
Yeah, but
astrology and science were much closer than astrology and religion at certain points, it seems.
Well, a lot of people have looked at Kepler as being really, I think Kessler called him the watershed. He was right at the pivot, and he was playing both, and not conscious that there was a difference. And the man wrote the first science fiction novel. I mean, he really was a wonder. But
who wrote the first science fiction novel? Kepler.
Johannes Kepler. Yeah. Yeah. So it was one of these voyages to the moon, kind of thing. But no, what I wanted to say is the experience of a human being on this planet is that the sun goes up in the morning and it sets at night. And this is our reality. This is the phenomenological reality. And then science comes along and displaces that and says, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. Don't pay attention to common sense. That's wrong.
Yeah. Let's look at the model, right?
Yeah, let's look at the model, and the model is true.
Shows us the fourth eye that we don't have, the third eye that we don't have. Yeah. So now
we've got a choice. We can see it both ways without feeling like we're torn.
Conversation before when we did our preliminary chat, and it really struck me that a discipline that seeks, well, these two forms of reasoning,
yes,
cannot at least does not forward the conventional nature of cosmology. Put the Earth in the center or the Sun in the center, there's a relative movement between the two, with third parties moving in a certain way based on which way you put them, where you put the middle. But you can make it work wherever you put the middle. It does work wherever you put the middle.
Yes,
wherever
it does work.
The center of the model, it doesn't matter.
The relations are invariant.
Yeah, and you know what? The Sun is going around something identified our distance from it. And when we do, we will burn a few more people at the stake and build another more complex model and have a computer that can crunch the numbers for that one. But when we get up in the morning, the Sun will still be there and it will still set over there, which is where you started. So these are mistaking pictures for reality.
It's idolatry, I think.
It's idolatry, absolutely. Yeah. It's idolatry. So science is no different from religion. So this is the first.
No, it's false pride. It really is. And there's no science. Science, I mean, it's just it's a word for what people do. Certain people are engaged with grappling with ideas and grappling with experimental procedures and try to nail things down, and they belong to language communities, thought communities.
So that brings me to the other piece that I've this is great. So the other, so now I didn't want, and I never do in my work, just operate within one methodology or paradigm, because like I said, when you ask the question, family or not, well, you know what, we got feet on both sides. We really do. My dad would never raise his hands in the temple. He'd just bring us along and stand with his hands behind his back. I mean, like, you know, it's fine. And he was, I would say, not an aggressive atheist, but ultimately an atheist to the last, till the very last, right? So we're all there together working it. Right, he would come with us and he would do the ceremony to the point that it was necessary socially, or to keep my mom happy or whatever, and then he'd step back.
I really prefer it when it's not even a question, you know?
Yeah, it's just there. It's just so this is in me. Both these things are in me. So I need, and that's also why I sent you the Foucault Chomsky video, because I'm always struggling with the here and now, right? So the here and now is social issues.
Very much. It's the Vancouver's here and now, and it's the Academy's here and now, and
and people in the world around us here and now, right? So all these models have implications for living beings. So astrology, our astrology, Hindu astrology, the astrology that leads to the planets being anthropomorphized and idolized in the temple, that same astrology is connected to our caste system, absolutely, with a direct line, you know, and the caste system that is universally understood as being oppressive is part of our reality. I can't be a Hindu without it. I'd have to modify a lot of things before I say I'm a Hindu, but you know what? which I do, right? And it's a lot of work. If you think about it, it's very difficult. You're almost not a Hindu anymore, and you might as well be a Buddhist.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Could you, in a science fictional sense, speculate about that caste system either living on or dissolving?
Oh, no, this is simple. This is very simple. It's a language issue.
Okay.
White people sit here and say that's bad shit over there while doing the same shit under a different name to the whole world. The whole world is a caste system. The name isn't there, but the function is there. It's actually part of the argument. So it's really, really important to understand how caste works for us. And how important it is, back to your question of are we secular, how much we have willfully forgotten in 3 generations about caste as we modernized. We disavow aspects of it because of ideas from the West, better ideas about human equality and justice.
Yeah, Enlightenment ideals.
Enlightenment, well, yeah. Enlightenment and ethics, and well, not necessarily from the West. Like the Buddhists brought it in India long ago, right? Before the colonials came, the Buddhists said you can't do this shit. You know, stop.
Before the Buddhists removed themselves from India.
Well, Indians removed them.
Yes, exactly.
They were removed. It's not clear how. The history isn't there, but we know for a fact that Asoka conquered the whole of India, literally, like Alexander or something, and converted to Buddhism.
And then he converts to Buddhism, becomes the Prince of Peace.
And spreads Buddhism throughout India and the world. So Thailand, Burma, Sri Lanka, all are Buddhist because of Asoka, essentially. But today in India, there are no Buddhists. So there was a revival. There were religious wars, I believe, that are not clearly recorded in history. At least they were proselytizing, actually, wars of killing. It's not clear. But at some point, that Buddhist continent became Hindu again. And then the Muslims came, and then the colonials came. So there's been waves of this stuff, right, happening. But the caste idea is logically, structurally connected in the way the 2s and the 4s, 3s and the 4s work, connected with astrology, reincarnation, social order, and salvation. This is our world. It's connected. One of the reasons I haven't been writing is that I found an amazing book trying to learn about astrology. It's called The Karmic Theater, Self, Society, and Astrology in Jaffna.
Oh, wow.
I'm learning about my own culture, stuff my mama never told me.
Excellent.
Look, and it's like, what? It's like crazy stuff.
Show me the spine.
Oh, you can't read it. I'll show you this.
There it is. The Karmic Theater. Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
So theater is it, right? Theater. So this idea that it's all a construct, whether it's linguistic or structural or whatever, I think is part of what I needed to do to bridge the two. And because I'm talking too much when I should really be getting you to spill the beans on some topics, a quick fix on apart from debunking scientism, the next thing to do is to use some contemporary social science or social theory to begin to be able to talk about these things in a way that transfers to the discourse, right? Other than sitting in the in the traditional school, which is a very it's a silo. So what I've tried to do is use Bourdieu's theories of field, habitus, doxa, misrecognition, and capital, briefly, right? So this is something that allows me to translate with whether it's science or religion, and it's also the kind of idiom that these anthropologists and social scientists operate in, right? So I'm reading a book about my culture, and it's amazing, and I'm really ambivalent about all the shit, and really impressed and amazed, and then I go through to the end, and I find that his is an analysis of power, and he sees the whole thing as a means of maintaining social order.
And that's a language that you are used to.
Yes,
right?
And I'm happy with.
It's from your milieu.
I'm happy to engage with that language, and I'm with them. I'm with them up to a certain point. It's only when the ambivalence doesn't arise that I feel disappointed.
I've always been most happy when I can have my cake and eat it too.
Yes.
That really is what pleases me the best.
I think that's really important because it's you've got to try. You've got to try.
And I've got to be able to see both ways and see that there's a gap that can't be bridged and then bridge it anyway. You know, it makes me happy.
Yeah, so having set up that platform of social science, social theory, language, you know, power, important, right? So what's astrology? So a quick run through of what's astrology, just to get some common ground. But essentially, it's an ancient thing. We already said comes from Babylon, Assyria, Mesopotamia, through the Greeks, who did the bulk of the work of what is practiced today. The Indians had their own, because they have their own line coming from the ancient civilizations. The Chinese have a completely independent system that still functions.
Interestingly, apparently the Tibetans have Tibetan astrology, which is a blend of Chinese and India, you know?
Yeah, and the Indian one, I think, is considered to be essentially the Greek, the main and extensions of the Greek astrology. But essentially, there's the original mundane astrology that deals with groups, kings, countries, on the principle of a celestial and earthly correlation. The idea that the chart of the king will reflect the fate of the country, this kind of idea. Then there's electional, which is actually, we live by this. We have an almanac, a book that I've seen growing up, and different families are more strict, but there are good times and bad times for different. Baghdad, apparently, Baghdad was founded on this kind of basis at a good time by Muslim astrologers. So this idea of the planets being in alignment for an action, be it a wedding or visiting a relative in the new year. So this is the most common experience in my life, is going to somebody's house for a visit as a kid and hearing the adults chat, kind of gossip, whisper, okay, it's not a good day. We are not going to offer you a drink today. And no hot drink, maybe some water if you're really thirsty. It's a faux pas not turning up on that day, or it's an understood thing that, we had to make the visit because we have no other time, but we won't take a drink. It's a good time to take a drink. Otherwise, if we did, there might be a falling out between us. This is the superstition of the meaning of it. But whatever it was, this is electional astrology. Based on the position of the planets, we order our lives.
And I'm just going to throw in that I do believe that people enjoy complexification for its own sake. They like patterns and they like little intricate moving parts, It satisfies something in us.
Ritual.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think that's what ritual is. We organize. It's organization, is that, right? Repetition, organization, shape, structure.
Yeah. Okay. So these are various symmetries.
Yeah. But also, what more fundamental shape is there than the movement of the planets? Right?
There is none.
There is none. No. So at least from our earthly point of view, which brings us back to the medieval cosmos. Why would we want to look at it from the sun? We're here, right? So anyway, in astrology, essentially, we are looking at it from here. Right? That's astrology is based on looking at at the stars and planets from the Earth. And so then there's natal astrology. Sorry, you wanted to say?
I was just sort of reflecting, but just that we have natal astrology, the birth configuration.
That's individual's chart, right? So, and natal astrology is still practiced in the popular media here as like personality types, or the things that could happen to you if you're a Pisces. You might get your heart broken if you start something with somebody this week.
Carl Jung, who introduced the psychological theory of personality types, this breakdown, which was definitely a fourfold structure. He was a devotee. He was devoted to astrology. He was an astrologer himself. So was Yeats, they had schooled themselves in this arcane art,
And Jung is important in the closing stages of my argument. Jung, not in himself, but his disciples, I think, his students produced what is known, I think, as the Myers-Briggs type inventory.
Yes, that's right.
Which is a personality test that is used extensively today.
In human resources departments all over. Yeah.
And So the closing argument is going to be whether you like it or not, whether it's true or not, whether you believe in it or not, its consequences are patent in society. Right. People are acting upon it, and therefore society is in some sense determined by it, be it big data, analytics. The computer says no, deferral of decision making to algorithms, or my, grandmother saying don't go out today, right? Because it's not a good time based on the little yellow book that every household has. It's about the same. We're organizing our behavior, behavioral organization, based on something, and these two different poles actually are things at the very end of the day, by which we organize. So we've come to the end of the argument. But so natal astrology, and then the most contemporary, the newest form, horary astrology, which some suggest was developed from the Greek stuff by the Indians and the Persians, and furthered by the Arabs. So this idea that you make a chart for the moment of inquiry. I come to you, I have a question. So you make a chart. Where are the stars at this moment for this question, for this person? And what are the implications of that?
Well, it's like the ancient practice of bibliomancy.
Tell me.
You open a book at a certain moment and you just read a certain page wherever it opens. You put your finger down on a passage and you read it.
And you interpret, right?
You interpret it as an oracle.
Yeah, oracles.
This is an oracle.
Oracles, foresight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's talking about this moment. It's like throwing the I Ching,
Yeah, I Ching. Yeah.
Thing. Yeah, and it doesn't. I don't know why. I don't know why it's an issue at all.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. It's a basis for decision making.
I think there is a trying to hardness about apologizing. Science apologists. They're still sort of trying to defend science against what? I don't know. I mean, wasn't that one long ago? 4 centuries ago.
Well, okay, I'll read a bit more from my paper exactly on that point to show you the mindset of the philosophy of science at the moment of victory. It's very different from today.
Right.
So look at this. So the section is Debunking Scientism. And where is it? Okay. The ethos of this era, let me read the previous sentence. So there was an earlier time when the philosophy of science had to wage a self-conscious struggle to usurp the dominant theological order, right? That was the time when scientists were the good guys, I guess, right? And the ethos of this era is exemplified in the words of Henri de Saint-Simon, Simon Simon, and here's the quote: "A scientist, my dear friends, is a man who foresees. It is because science provides the means to predict that it is useful, and scientists are superior to all other men."
Wow.
So here, science is claiming ascendancy in the language, in the terms of the previous order, which is superstition and oracles and faith and God. Right. Science is claiming to be better at it than it. Now things have changed. We talk about experimental proofs, and I
think it would be It would be wrong to want to enlist data science, for example, to the job of proving astrology. I just think that would be like so wrong-headed. And there was a book from a Frenchman who had done huge statistical studies of birth order and natal charts and stuff, trying to prove the truth of astrology. And yeah, people.
It would be just as difficult as proving, as I said before, the wood of the two came from the true cross, or right. Even proving the truth of science. Could you use anything, to prove that the sun was at the center of the solar system? Really, right? You could, as we said before, increase the probability of that by showing all the observations and so on, that actually it's going around this way and that. But at the end of the day, it could just be that we haven't opened our third eye or built the AI that can X-ray the other dimension.
Well, to think that it can show us something that we can't already see, we're going to ask it for, oh yeah, so prove it, And then we open the lid of the AI and we peer inside its artificial brain, and we find that we can make no sense of it at all.
Because it's also based on an analogous an analogy to intuition, right? AI is guessing.
It is, and we won't escape.
Yeah. But I found that interesting just now. I was trying to agree with you that there's no point in trying to prove something like proving astrology works, and ended up saying when we get the AI that might help us prove it, right? I think it's because at the core of my belief, and I say belief very deliberately, it's this essential idea that we spoke of McLuhan and the reach, the prosthesis.
Right.
We see to the limit of our perception and our tools, and then we analyze and rationalize. So if you don't have eyes, and some creatures don't have eyes, it's a different cosmos. For the
and not, because there's a coherence to reality that's there whether we believe in it or not.
No, but the coherence has to be named before we can compare notes.
It does help. It does help.
So unless you are unless we're back to the 24,
well, yes, 5 philosophers and an elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's still an elephant.
Or maybe it was a rhinoceros. I don't know.
Put it this way: for all intents and purposes, the world is at the limit of our perception, and today much of our perception is prosthetic.
And more so all the time. And I think something that I have found fascinating is that there is a unified approach to imaging, which is quite indifferent to which sense modality. It's all one.
Is that a theoretical thing you're talking about? The theory of imaging?
Yeah.
Information. It's an information.
It's related to what we can do with information, and it is related to those 24 philosophers and that quote from Yeats about this sphere. All there is this one sphere, of the event, and it's just, expanding. And then event waves interact with other waves of other events, giving rise to other waves that are their own events, and this produces this unimaginable complexity, which is this kind of hologram. It's an interference pattern that we're quite good at.
I think my doggy is asking for a room exit.
Okay.
Maybe we should just break it just for the sake of getting a new...
Sure. So did you want to close it? Closing word there?
No. I mean, start a new link. I mean, I've got plenty to say if you've got the time.
Well, I don't know if we have light for too much longer, but I have really been enjoying the play of sunlight in your. So thank you. And yeah, I'll be back.